that's it. I mean, these people are very fun. So will this one work? Will this one work? Because also this, because there's also a time when people are going to want to ask questions and we have to move this around. Well, we will use this. Switch it on and test it, please. And I still have to speak here.
Yeah, but you don't have to. You don't have to. It's gonna be fine even when you're standing up.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you. Good morning, colleagues. We are going to have to get started. I realize that we are a little bit late, but I'm sure we will make up for the lost time. We should have started at 9 o'clock already. My name is Kabelo Sebolai. I am the Institutional Language Coordinator. I am going to be the Program-Director today. I would like to start by thanking you all for making time to attend our language Indaba and to welcome you warmly. This is a very important event to us. It is one of those that the day that so the event we hold in the interest of implementing our language policy. Right, so thank you very much. I believe that you've got you all have access to our program for today and that you've taken a look at it. I'm gonna
Let me see if I can get my bottle.
about anything. Okay, sorry about that. We had a very small glitch. Just to say that the language in Daba is very important to us. Sorry, colleagues, we're waiting for somebody to come and sort this out. So you were keeping the batteries away from us.
No, probably they died, you see, but we didn't. But we
Alright.
checked early morning, it was fine, but you can just change it. You can test it again.
Okay, thank you, colleague. Sorry about that. I just wanted to say that the Language Indaba is a very important event to us because it has in the past, and specifically last year, created space, a productive space for us to share ideas in terms of language policy implementation. Just like other institutions, we are all grappling with this task of making sure that we implement our language policies and that we do so in line with the language policy framework of the Department of Higher Education and Training. But without any waste of time, I'm going to call upon Dr. Liesl Hudson, who is the Faculty Language Coordinator in the Faculty of Health and Wellness Sciences. She is also a part of our language working group to come to the fore and to do an official opening of our event. Over to you. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, Dr. Sebolai, and morning, everyone. Goeiemorgen, molweni. Oh, it feels like Sunday school, not even the first years. Let's try again. Goeiemorgen, molweni. Good morning and welcome. Thank you. So I had a little bit of linguistic, not nightmare, but an incident where, you know, on the website it says Wamkilikile. And I was preparing my welcome with Wamkilikile in mind. So when I saw the program and, whoa, this is something that I can't even pronounce, I had to look for someone who is isiXhosa first language speaker. And then I met Clifford, who's Chonga, hey? Chona. And he couldn't help me, and I looked and looked, and then I met Nwabisa. Welcome, Nwabisa, who told me that uwamkelo is the verb, and wamkilikile is you are welcome. So that's why I preferred wamkilikile, because I want you to be welcomed at this event today. Can I see by a show of hands whose first language Indaba is this? And I'm counting first as of 2011. So I've chatted with Nomkulisi Yankees, who told me, let's start the official language Indabas from 2015, because that was after the policy and the unit then came thereafter. So whose first language Indaba is this since 2015? I saw a few hands, yes. Who's here today? Very welcome to you. I hope you will be excited and that your light will be ignited during this event. Who's been at last year's event? Yes, our keynote, our photographer, hopefully our IT people, and I hope Nwabisa also, I hope that this year's event will carry you through to next year's event, because we come here to draw from other people's expertise. We have two interesting keynotes, one from Applied Sciences, Dr. Tisha will talk to us, and then a special guest who has come home. So Somi will hopefully bring back her passion and tell us how to maintain that passion that she left 11 years ago. So welcome back to that keynote. And to all of you, those of us who are coming to learn more, to keep our flames burning, the new ones who your flames will definitely be lit after today in terms of language development and language support. And the rest of us who are here not only to support, but to really bring our voice to the conversations, because on the program you'll see there's dedicated time for discussion. So I really want you to participate. Don't think that you can't contribute, because your voice is important to take language development to the next level. So a warm welcome, and I hope we're going to have warm conversations as well, not as hot as the aircon, but hopefully some insightful discussions. Thank you, everyone, and thank you to the program director as well.
Thank you very much, Liesl. Colleagues, you will see that we were going to have our DVC teaching and learning, Professor Balkaran coming to speak to us as well, as a way to also officially open this event for us. But
good morning, everyone. My name is I'm the events and marketing coordinator at Sabato. So I'm responsible for this event. Unfortunately, because we are a renewable energy center, we do not have an aircon. So we use a system that's called HVAC system. And unfortunately, what it does, when it's cold outside, then inside it becomes hotter. And when it's hot, so it's vice versa. So unfortunately, that's we don't have an aircon. We also suffer inside the building because of the system that we make use of. Very sorry about it. Thank you. You need a separate venue. Okay, it's fine. I'll sort it out.
thank you, Masabata. Not so unpleasant news, but what can we say? Right, so I was going to say, colleagues, that we were expecting Professor Balkaran, our DVC teaching and learning, to come also to be part of us today and to give a talk in the form of opening this event officially. But unfortunately, he learned late yesterday that he is going to have a MENCOM meeting. I believe it's an emergency meeting, and that he wouldn't be able to make it to this event today. So that item we will now have to skip. So we're going to go to the next item, and again, I'm going to ask Liesl again to come to the fore to introduce our speaker, our first keynote speaker today. I'm sorry that I seem to be making Liesl do a lot of work, but it is because of her commitment to our cause and her positive attitude to the work that we are doing in the language unit, in the language working group, in the Faculty of Health and Wellness, and across the institution. This is the reason why I tend to get her to be involved a lot more. Right, Liesl, could you please kindly come to the fore to introduce our keynote speaker from the University of Cape Town. Thank you.
Just need to give me 2 seconds to find it quickly.
Okay, find it quickly.
I just need 2 seconds to quickly find. Was I talking to this one or this one?
This one is for live streaming.
Oh, is there live streaming as well? Okay, so I have the pleasure of introducing to you a well-known in the Fundani space, but I'm sure the language practitioners who's been with CPUT for a while know Ms. Somikazi Dayi, and I'm apologizing for mispronouncing. I'm sure some of the letters or clicks in the name. You'll note that she's mentioned here as a PhD candidate. Now, Somi is so much more as a PhD candidate. She's a language practitioner. She is a linguist by heart, by passion, by, I don't know how to explain to you, but she's committed to language and language development. Currently, she is, let me start. Somi's language teaching career commenced with teaching isiXhosa as a second language through the National Language Project. Now, you can, in schools across the Western Cape for a while ago. She was also involved in private companies and organizations that were committed and conscious, those are important words, committed and conscious to the centrality of language for transformation in society and across various disciplines. Fast forward to where she is now. She is the program convener of isiXhosa in the medical school out at UCT. Her role focuses on isiXhosa program, and this program teaches isiXhosa to medical students in the MBCHB program from their first to fourth year, as well as in rehabilitation sciences, where the language policy of UCT and its implementation plan plays out, promoting it as a second language of teaching and learning. Concept literacy, working with I'm not going to say that word, but words, medical terms in isiXhosa, multilingualism, code switching, and literacy, translanguaging, sorry. She therefore encourages language policy monitoring and further research. She has supervised postgrad students. That's why the PhD is now taking a while and a turn. She will get there. She promised next year she'll commit to get that tick off her ever-long to-do list. And she always stays abreast of current and topical issues in language development. So I bring to you Ms. Somi Dai, who will be our first keynote for the morning. Thank you.
Oops. Thanks, Lizzie.
Sorry,
I'm short, so when I'm wearing flat shoes, I'm in trouble. Thank you so much. All right. I do make a confession, though, that the people who are working with sound help me. I have an inborn mic, so sometimes it kind of pushes this one to the, to the external space. So please work with me in controlling that. Thank you very much. Right, as it's already said, my name is Somikazi, but everyone knows me by the name Somi, which is half of my name. Somikazi, the surname is Dei, Red. So I take this time to greet all that are in the house, MC, the organizers of this event. I'm not sure whether I should call it event, because language indabas should not be an event. They should rather be ongoing, particularly that a language keeps evolving. It keeps evolving, and now called to address a serious, difficult topic, 200 years of celebrating isiXhosa. That is not something, it's 2 centuries of isiXhosa orthography, isiXhosa as a written language. That is not something to take less serious, particularly when we see what is happening. I will not go back to the whole introduction, but to start with, I want to apologize. I don't know where my gadgets are as we speak. They are somewhere in a car. I last saw them on Monday. Now, I don't have a presentation online because it is in that laptop. It's not with me. Probably it will find me when I leave here. So you better talk to your neighbor and say, can you try to press on and listen? Hold on, hold on. I'm hopeful that while we are, I don't think I'm presenting, I think I'm just sharing what exactly is happening. Because when one is presenting, the expectation is that you should be bringing all theories that really speak to what language is. Today, I don't intend doing that. I'm intend talking about what is truly happening in the language space since the 200 years. And I don't know everything, I must say. I don't know everything, but I'm bringing what I think is current in the academic debates, in the scholarship of debate. With that, I truly want to thank CPUT, but I want to thank you, Dr. Sebolai, for making sure that this day happens. And thank you that you didn't give me the program, because if you have given me the program, I'll only come through the door for the time that you have given me, and then leave. But because I also want to share in other colleagues' presentation, so because language should be a debated phenomena every single day, because there is a lot to talk about. Because I understand that just by people in this room, so much has been done, even by this current institution where we are today. CPUT has done a lot of work in the languages. But I'm not going to be all over the place. I am just going to be talking about why is it necessary for us, maybe not only as institutions, but as a country, to say we celebrate the 200 years of isiXhosa being returned. isiXhosa in 1823, we are told that the missionary, maybe I'll call him apostle or Reverend Benny and Ross, began to write isiXhosa. They were writing isiXhosa from hearing, from the speakers of isiXhosa, because it was not a written language then. They were not alone in the process. isiXhosa speakers played out to be informants, a word at times I wish to replace, because I don't think they were informants. I think they were people who were culturally living their lives, but there was an interest from the missionaries to have it written. We all know that history. And this is a very good thing, because in the writing of isiXhosa, what it really did, it gave us today, it gave us then something to look at, to look forward to, where isiXhosa is concerned. Hence, we are celebrating these 2 years. In this age of digitalization, what then happens, because Kashula, Maseko, and all other writers have spoken a lot about what happened in the evolution of that writing, what was in the beginning, and what happened to be to us getting the alphabets that we have today, or the letters, the vowels that we have. Why are particular words written in particular manner when in origin they were written with this? I don't have that slide with me, unfortunately. Now, what truly happens is, to answer the question as to what is it then that we are celebrating in these 200 years? Allow me, ladies and gentlemen, to start with a question that problematizes the fact that isiXhosa is still seen as a language that operates on the periphery of the mainstream curriculum. That became controversial because we've got African Languages Department. But what you see, you see that across institutions, even in our own UCT, what you have a number of students that are registered in what would be called the mainstream, where they are doing isiXhosa, the morphology, the syntax, and all the theories that are well versed with the African languages. Then you have a number of students that are doing isiXhosa as a language for communication, or as a communication language, in the very same department. And all of these, from all these registrations, you realize that others are doing it because it is important for them to do. Others are doing it because they have to fill in the courses of their choice within a particular study. And my question is, why is still this? Because if we are at 200 years of having isiXhosa as a written language, we have to be, in my mind, we should be in a position where we are saying institutions across the country, particularly those who adhere to the national language policy framework that says at least each province should be worried about the languages that are in that province. If that is the case, all institutions across the Western Cape are supposed to have isiXhosa as one of their subjects, whether at a level of being able to communicate, but it should be a language that is, no one in fact should graduate without having isiXhosa if that is the case. This is my argument that by now it should have been the case 200 years, and we are still operating on the periphery. We still see ourselves busy with technology development, and that is not wrong, because languages evolve. So did isiXhosa evolve, and it's still evolving. It's still evolving. For instance, today, people used to talk about someone, and all those words seemed to have a particular connotation. But when you revisit them and look at them fully, you realize that no, by the way, they don't. They really speak to the problem that needs medical attention. Because all the words that we're replacing them with, ugowa, uqeka, I'm not really talking to that. They are really providing a platform for a misdiagnosis. So already you can tell that there seems to be this tension, which is not deliberate, between the language that is written, the language that is spoken, and the time at which we are at. 200 years, we shouldn't be talking about terminology development. We should be talking about terminology alignment, because terminology has already been developed. We shouldn't be using texts such as intellectualization of isiXhosa or intellectualization of African languages. We should be talking about sustaining the intellectualized languages, including isiXhosa and all other languages. But because today the case is for isiXhosa, we continue to talk about concept literacy development, which is also what we are all fascinated about and involved in. They become a once-off job. There is no commitment, even after 200 years, across institutions. People who work on glossaries, people who work on terminology development, they get to work for a particular moment and then leave. They work for 6 months on a particular project through a funding. There still is less commitment where it says there should be roles, because with the digitalization upon us, with all, and when I use the word digitalization, I use it from the approach of saying it is the use of technologies that are available for either archiving, storage, for interaction, self-study, and working along with the current available languages and developing what could be, because language evolves. But 200 years, we shouldn't be developing. We shouldn't be developing. We should be in a stage where we say, it's not even a question whether our assessment papers should be providing all languages. Students should have a choice by now to say, I choose to write in English, I choose to write in isiXhosa. Well, I'm not trying to create something, but I'm trying to say people should be comfortable enough to say, I am assessed in the language that I'm comfortable with. So my argument is that we shouldn't be talking about development. We should be talking about sustaining. We should be talking about relevance. We shouldn't be talking about intellectualization, because my understanding of 200 years and what has happened when we take a bird's eye view is to see that there is so much work that is happening. But again, the commitment is not as such that from year 1 to year 4, this is what we should happen. We only see people because they are driven by a research interest or because there is a language policy that needs to be fulfilled. We are doing one thing at a time, instead of a full force kind of development that is there. Right. I need to breathe. So what have we done successfully? Because I said I'm opening the talk by problematizing the whole issue of having 200 years celebrations. Why isiXhosa is not at the same level with other languages. I'm using other languages to talk to English. My understanding is that English is quite old, someone will argue, but it was also developed from nothing. It was developed from a combination of other languages. isiXhosa, fortunately, is the only language. It is the language. It is not developed from others. That argument will also be discussed because there are other languages in the Nguni cluster. There is isiXhobi, where it originates from. But it's not so far from isiXhosa, unlike English. What am I saying when I'm saying that? Because isiXhosa has got the language of its own through all those formations, what we should be saying now is that in the math classroom, there has to be materials that are written in isiXhosa the same way that are written in English, not translated. Not translated. Translation is not a decolonizing mode of curriculum. It only gives us a meaning of a word. We should be in an attempt to decolonize the curriculum to say, what is the actual meaning of perpendicular? What is the actual meaning of a fraction? What is the actual meaning of x plus x? And we begin to develop, by develop, not the language, but develop the discipline using the language as a vehicle. We should be able to teach mathematics in isiXhosa. We should be able to teach science in isiXhosa. And our teaching should not only be aligned through approaches such as multilingualism and translingualism, but instead, the curriculum should be started from all over again. What is it that we want the students to take from what they are learning? What is it that they want to understand from maths? And therefore develop assessment materials that speak to that as well. Because what we do now, we support true multilingualism understanding, which is good. I'm still an advocate for that, which we do. But our assessment remains to be monolingual again. We support, people they gain access, they gain understanding, come at certain time. The paper that we see is in one language and one language only. So if we were to look at the decolonization of the curriculum, it means language must be central for development. Assessment must be also done in that particular language. Evaluation should be carried out through that kind of a language. Then goes back to a cycle. Teacher training should also be done in the same manner that accommodates language. Why will that be important? Teachers at school at times might argue and say, language is not my work. We hear this a lot when we are doing research. Language is not my work. I'm here to teach geography. I'm here to teach science. By school, I'm not exempting universities. I'm not exempting institutions of higher learning. I'm just using school as a center of gaining knowledge. So why is this all? Why is this all an issue? It is an issue because there is a lot of digitalization that is going around. There is a lot of archiving that is going around. There is a lot of work that is being put in storehouses, in store platforms that I don't want to believe that there is any validation before doing this, unless institutions, as we see the work that's done by Forte, by Rose University, UCT, CPUT, on small amounts of work. I do believe that UWC as well has done great work in Stellenbosch. We see those they put up there for people to engage. But then there is another volume of the body of work that is all over the place. And it doesn't seem that it is regulated because we all have access to any kind of platform of work production. But it doesn't really give someone the actual understanding of what the language should be doing. Because the language policy is clear. The language policy is clear. It shouldn't be there for the sake of being there. It should be there so that it be implemented, monitored, evaluated, monitored, and re-implemented. What does this mean? It means making sure that the concepts that are being produced, they go by discipline and there is one core body of knowledge. Whether you go to the portal of CPUT, you'll find the same concept pronounced or written the same way. Whether you go to UCT, UWC, you find the same. Because we all have access and everyone is producing, even outside the institutions of learning, with no guidance as to what is the curriculum that is needed. Right. So use of digital digital systems is quite important because what it does is it gives us both the historical pace of what was happening and how then do we sustain those and how do we develop from what we have done. I constantly make an example of mathematics, an example of engineering, an example of design because those are the areas that I've kind of been fully involved with. And when I get to the close, you'll indicate how much time I have. When I get to the close, I'll talk exactly about what happens in the health sciences, which is one part of the work that has not gone digitally as yet, because there is a lot of review, there is a lot of writing. Remember we said when we spoke, it is quite important to start working from there. It is good to start working with a discipline from the language as opposed to translating, because translation doesn't give the actual meaning. it only gives us access to understanding of what is being spoken of. Engineering and all other subjects, it is good to have all these glossaries. It is good to have all this context, but they need to be interactive as well. They need to be interactive, especially with young people who just have technology at where they go. Let alone that it helps others to bunk classes, but it also gives them access to self-study, so they have no reason to not be in class while they are not in class. They could be removed from class but physically attending. So there has to be alignment. This is what we're talking about when we say we need to make sure that there is alignment when we are talking about language development in the curriculum and therefore how to sustain all the language practices that are being spoken of. Right. Validation has to be the main thing. Somebody must validate all this kind of concepts that we are using. And resources is another factor, because when you validate and regulate, then we know who's got the portal. We don't have to look around. The last time I left, before I left, there was a body of work that was happening in electrical engineering and chemical engineering right here, and management, where concepts were pulled and teased out and then refined and sifted as to what would work for the classroom effectively to enhance understanding. Because the reality is, although we celebrate today, we still use a deductive approach where teaching is concerned. We're saying students must learn more English. Which English? Because there are sets of Englishes. There is the one that we use when we talk among ourselves. That is one set of English. There is the one that we use when we communicate among us as staff. That is one set of English. There is the one that is used when one is outpouring knowledge, is disseminating knowledge. That is another set. But then there is another set of English, the cognition. How are we bringing that one across? If we say students strengthen English, there are 4 types or 5 types, and now there is another subset of English that also emerged from all of this. Then we are already giving them a didactic approach and a very problematic approach. And Perkins call it an approach of difficulty. We're saying let us operate from an approach, a theory of difficulty, where it is so difficult for someone to access knowledge, when we should be having their languages fully working for effective understanding. That was just the background. Now, what happens? What happens in the health sciences? What happens in the medical school, where we have 7 streams of students that are taught this course? So we've got year 1, semester 1, given 10 sessions of his course. Year 1, semester 2, year 2, 20 sessions in a year. When they get to 3rd year, they've got about 36 in total. 3rd year, they also do another 12. They go to year 4 with less than 60. When they go to year 4, they get another 12. That also says they don't have 100 contact sessions in a collection of 4 years. Can I break? Now you see why I started with problematizing the fact that we are celebrating 2 years. Because what it means is that we are again on a different context using the same approach of difficulty. Because we are saying student, I almost use another statement, swallow it as hard as is. 72 contacts or 80 contact sessions from year 1 to 4. This is someone who's expected to be dealing with the clinical language. Remember, we spoke about different sets of Englishes. So is Xhosa. We've got different sets of Xhosa. As much as we are able to communicate to the patient, but there is a particular language that is used, because in year 1, students are dealing with what could have been communication and grammar, but we focus on grammar because it becomes imperative for them when they get to second year, because it is integral. That integration forces them to learn cases, which means they don't spend much time on communication before they just get to cases. Immediately when you teach someone a case-orientated and case-specific language, there's promotion of rote learning. There's promotion of learning to pass, more than learning to understand what I'm learning. It is not because of anything that students are not doing, but it is because if we are talking about a decolonized curriculum, it should look at the identity of the language, the requirements of the language, the culture that is embedded. Because if you're going to be teaching students who are going to work in a clinical setting, culture is central to it. IsiXhosa uses lots of euphemism in speech because there are certain parts of the body that we don't really call them by name, but there are also accepted words to use for those. And this also plays part of the curriculum. So it's not immersion. What about immersion? What are other associated meanings that have to do with it? Is immersion what we see from the outside? I'm just using that as a very weird example. Is it what you see? Is it what you used to see? But when we're really talking about issues such as breaking up news of death, if you're going to be talking about death, it's not something that you just do like, now come collect your body, your person is dead, because people do not die. So you already need to take a whole lot of understanding that for me to design this kind of a module, culture is going to be the part of this. The understanding of who am I serving has its centrality to language as well. Understanding that our languages are also tonal, understanding that our languages are also having a rhythm, they have a sound. So what it really means, while it will be teaching students in medical school that this is how you speak, but it also says this is how your face looks like in the process of talking. We said this process is tonal, it is also expressive. Nobody has to tell that someone is angry. No one has to tell that they are happy because it comes out of the language. So those should be forming part of the curriculum if we are talking about the decolonization of the curriculum. It should not just be IsiXhosa must be taught. What IsiXhosa must be taught? Is it a fully fledged of being Umxhosa in IsiXhosa class for the understanding of somebody who speaks IsiXhosa, who should be celebrating IsiXhosa? What does that go with? Like we already said, the attitudes when you are talking to people, they become imperative. The kind of age level, they become imperative. And all of these, they come out of the language. So in our attempt to make sure that policies work well, but you also need to say, we need to spend much time in looking at the curriculum that is making a student somebody who's able to work well out there. What are the advantages then of doing this in a time as this? What makes it work well to implement language policies in a time where information is in the tip of our fingers? It is simple because of a few things. The hybridity of learning. Hybridity in that, while we've got technology, it brings three people, not necessarily on the same equation, but in the same balance. You've got the person who develops the curriculum. You've got the language expert working with that person. And you also need the person who's going to be using the same curriculum. So that by the time it gets to the user, it is so well blended. So we need to spend much time on the curriculum development. Then our celebration will really be justified. Sometimes we just say, go to this portal and click and clap and work it out and bring it. Hybrids also need mediation and facilitation. Hence the argument that we need someone to work with. there's a lot of work still that needs to be done in making sure that this curriculum, when developed, it is suitable to be used across universities so that we can save on resources that we use. If curriculum on engineering language is developed as a beauty, we don't have to do it. We just have to find collaborative work with the institution that has that, because that will be saving a lot of resources. I understand we've got all those things that kiyaka, yeyam, or yeyitu. It's time to break out of that for celebration. Academics can decide, colleagues can decide in their own silos how to do that. But it is becoming important that we don't have to duplicate development of resources or archival of resources. Could it be by open access? I don't know. Could it be by language indabas every once a month? I don't know, but it's also important that it be about sharing information. Because of digitalization, we don't really have to rewrite books that were there, but what we need to do is to take a leaf and make it accessible to others. I know there are issues of royalties, but there comes a time where we say, how do we work together in making sure that when we archive, there is no risk to the initial author and the other authors. So can you see already we are allowing a space that creates collaborations beyond our spaces of work, if we're going to involve other people to be part of that. But the argument is that most time or more time should be spent on curriculum development that is language sensitive, culture sensitive, making sure that it is from developing using that language, not translating. Because if we translate, we're still going to have those terms that we don't agree on. Because for someone else, the fraction is a Kageza. That is true, but not in mathematics. In mathematics, it's Kageza. Is it Kageza the number? Can you do that? So it cannot be Kageza. If we work together, the language expert, the teacher, the discipline, the discipline, what's the word? The discipline scholar, then we are able to understand what we are talking about. We are able, so we need to use more time in working out than coming up to upload what has been worked out thoroughly with these three components: language, the culture that goes with the language, and the discipline. Who is it for? Who is it for? We just proved now that Ikageza is not the same in science and in everyday language speech. Assessment papers, we spoke about that. Categorization of those. What we're talking about is receiving out information. I have kind of brought with me a slide where we can go and get this kind of information, where we're saying the bird's eye view is that there's institutions that are having this online. They have all these materials happening. If we go to their portals, we'll see that they are there. They are available. But how much are we promoting them so that they could be used? We're not talking about that. Like concepts in science, concepts in engineering, concepts in medicine, they are available. Right. I think I'm really getting closer to really wrapping up this discussion, or rather this presentation. But one of the things, as we celebrate the 200 years, that hasn't really been looked at is the fact that when we speak about language, we have to speak about resources. And resources in this case refers to money, imali. There still is, like in the case that I was talking about, in the case of a medical space, you have 7 levels of learning. You have 6 staff members who are working in that space. Heavy overloaded with work. to such that even what we are talking about, that is sitting down, unbundling the terms in the curriculum for fair development from isiXhosa, doesn't have space to happen. Because if it does, it means it will be an expectation of a non-realistic working hour. Because what it does is, a day you are offering 3 lectures. They are 1.5 hour, kind of a workshop mode, triple period, if there's such a thing. We're using that approach because what we are doing is that the curriculum is not developed from saying, what are the names of isiXhosa? Instead, we are equating it with other languages. For instance, if you were to take Afrikaans, Afrikaans is more like back-to-back with English. I might be wrong, but the form, the typology is not so much different. But if you're going to teach an African language, a lesson that you teach a student in another language, probably in English, will take 30 minutes. But if I am going to be teaching somebody isiXhosa who doesn't speak it, I need more time. So I don't need a once-off session in a week. I need more time on contact. This is what I was alluding to when I'm talking about the decolonization of the curriculum. Because if we are really talking about what are the needs of isiXhosa, the needs of isiXhosa are doubled. You have to double the effort to get to the student to understand what you are teaching. And you also need to make time, double the effort, to allow the student not only to reproduce, but to synthesize, familiarize themselves, then reproduce what's been taught. So what you are doing right now, it's definitely not window dressing, it's definitely not tokenism, but what it is a planning. It tells us we need to do much planning where African languages are concerned, because they cannot be equated to another language. While you have all these workloads, what it does is staff members or lecturers or academics do not have enough time to even monitor the work that they are doing, to reflect on the processes that they are doing. So it becomes a routine to say, oh, tomorrow I'll be teaching class A, I'll teach class B, I'll teach class C. Because every institution is going through austerity measures. And austerity measures have been such a song for quite a while. But the number of students are growing in the same programs that you are teaching where there are austerity measures. So we ask ourselves, where is our commitment to make sure that the celebration is a very good celebration? 200 years is so many years ago. We should be reading books. We should not have trouble to be talking to one another in isiXhosa. We should not have trouble to be writing to one another in isiXhosa. We should not have trouble to be really presenting papers in isiXhosa. We should not have trouble, arguments, and seeking approvals for students to write their theses in isiXhosa. Because 200 years of writing is worth noting in words, though. There must be outputs that says, we have gone this far. We still count the number of masters that are written in isiXhosa. Oh, I wrote mine in isiXhosa as well. But it had to go through so many levels. It has to go through so many levels. A very frustrating scenario. And I was coming from this fact that with this culture being around for quite a while, why would one be denied writing in their own language when they can? So I did it, and there was a cost involved because there weren't external examiners who were ready at the time. There were few. Because of the field that I was also researching, I was looking at mathematics. There was not a mathematics scholar who was ready to say, I will external examine in your own language. Not because I'm having a gripe with that, but I'm stating what is and what should be really redone for sustainability of the very language policy that is governing our institutions, or the language policies that you are introducing. It shouldn't be a problem to write in the languages given the fields that it is good, as long as it is their mother tongue and is catered for in the language policy. Somebody asked me, why are you writing ethics in Xhosa? Is there something wrong with you? I said, no, there's something so correct. I'm trying to prove that Xhosa has been intellectualized all these years. There is enough technology to argue the same way we have argued in another language. And I didn't. Someone else did it. Someone else did it. But every time there seems to be an understanding that if you write in Xhosa, it means you're excluding others. I'm saying, who is excluded? 200 years ago, kunabasonga siyakwazi uthatha isiXhosa eKapa. Sonke kumele basithathe isiXhosa eKapa. Sonke kumele basisebenzise isiXhosa njengolwimi lokuwela kulo xa sifundisa. 200 years ago, that was a very long time. That was a very long time. What am I saying? What am I saying? Or what are we talking about today? What we're talking about today is it is time to take out our language policies out of our digitalized spaces and put them in use and begin to make sure that this work goes across campuses, across disciplines. For one reason and one reason alone. It is really a good thing to argue in the language when you don't have to think whether it is Amabodela or Amakani. So it makes it so well good to just zoom into the language. Let my trouble be theory. Let my trouble be putting research across. But not a language of arguing as well, being another hidden trouble. So Imali should be made available. We all understand the term Imali, am I right? Yes. Program-Direkteur once made a very wonderful remark to say, if you're going to think about any celebration of any kind or extending any other program of any kind, make sure that there is Mali to do that. Imali ikona to do that. Because if you're going to be talking about language development, you're going to be talking about decolonizing even the spaces that we have, digitalized or not. Let there be Imali. Because we see great works that are being done. Sadila has done great works and they're still doing great work. That is a very great platform to go and check grammar on. That is a very good platform to go and check all what we're talking about, that languages, rather Xhosa started to be written in 1823. They've got all of that history. They've got the very first paper of Izimvo Zabansundu. They've got all the writings of that time. They can be done even now. And it is thanks to all the digital spaces that we are able to say, did Izimvo Zabansundu look like this in this particular time, in the 1800s, in the 9th? Is it really, did it really look like this? Did we write it like this as opposed to TJ, as opposed to TSH? Wow, we have evolved. But let us maintain. Let us maintain. I want to believe that we have always, this is one institution that has been really consistent about making sure that we maintain what we're talking about. But we can expand, I'm sure. We can definitely expand. Every time I want to find the glossary that we developed in graphic design, it kicks me out. It doesn't even remember that I was here 11 years ago. Do I have to redo what has been done? When I say I'm talking about us all. We should be having spaces where when I go into chemical engineering, I'm able to access those concepts that we developed in those years. I'm trying to find the faces. Those concepts that we developed in those years, they should be made available to us also, that we don't use the same imali that we need to do the same thing. We should be sharing, we should be collaborating, we should be producing, and it should not be at the cost of those who feel committed to be saying, we don't need to decolonize the curriculum. It should just be done because Languages are enough to make sure that there is technology. There is no point to cry about intellectualization at this time. It's been done already. Can we just maintain? Can we sustain what we're doing? Can we make it visible? Can we make it visible? Can we share? With that, enkosi kakhulu Chair. Enkosi kakhulu.
Thank you very much, Somi, for sharing your knowledge and ideas with us so clearly. You're going to have to stay here because what's going to happen next is that we're going to allow the audience to ask questions. I was wondering if we could not get another mic like this. No. Okay. Thank you, colleagues. We are at the point where you are now allowed to ask questions to Somi on the basis of her presentation. Can I have your indication to do that by raising your hand, please? Kevin is the first one.
Okay. Thank you so much. It's probably certainly marveling at the work you're doing and probably sharing, and maybe just let you know that in my department in marketing and in my subject in consumer behavior, this year we have actually given an assessment in this course. Not asking students to bring in their own language repository, but we've actually been building that over time. And we've actually created some sort of study material beginning in 2020, and we have actually been able to give some sort of an assessment. And I just wanted to maybe just make a bit of a comment, maybe this discussion on this relationship between translation and translanguaging. So I teach the subject consumer behavior. It draws quite a bit from psychology and sociology. So many of you here should marvel at me and say I'm fortunate, because psychology and sociology are issues of the mind and interaction, and every community has those naturally. So when you're looking at theories like classical conditioning, a learning theory by Pavlov, it's learning by association, it's so universal, you'll find it in every community. At that level, you have quite a bit of leeway to actually do a translation, almost a translation. It doesn't always work that way. And then for some theories, you actually have to develop new context and new meanings. And I think right behind you there is be proud of who you are, and when we're developing an explanation of personality, we ran into a bit of a concept with cultural part on the individualism of personality, and we thought of maybe communality would work. I thought I'll just probably bring that debate, because I think the important thing really is to also think about all this as a process. I think I like your opening remark. Language is a phenomenon to be debated, so nothing which is done would go that way. But I just thought wonderful work, and just bring the debate on translation and translanguaging. And
Okay, there's another hand up here. I don't know if it's a question or a comment.
Thank you very much. It's a comment and a question. Ulwimi sisi ndiyavuya kubona. Kamcelo bendilate mna, but kodwa bekumnandi ukuva kancane. Yeah. All right. So dinomhlobo kwalanga une PhD ngesibhulu. But kodwa une masters in mathematics. So I think it's very interesting that I have a friend, class, but his PhD is in Afrikaans. And I understand why he did that, because one of very few PhDs in Afrikaans. But I think what must be happening is having areas like mathematics. And you make us very proud, my sister. You make us very proud indeed. I'm working together with some colleagues, including Dr. Teacher, on a project with Sadila. We're looking at subtitling, and we're towards the write-up phase now. But interesting, what we've already found is the reticence of students to be working in, let's call it the mother tongue, the language of greatest proficiency. I think, is it all of them that chose to not listen in isiXhosa or the mother tongue, but or is it to watch the subtitles? They wanted to watch it in English. So how do we motivate our students to be working in the language of greatest proficiency? Is something that I feel, a question that we need to ask. Yeah.
Can I run to you so you can respond to that one?
Thank you very much for those comments. One, multilingualism and languaging, indeed, they give you access. They allow you to gain access into the core subject. But the argument is, can we move beyond that? I see what you are already doing in your classes, that assessment are also responding to that approach. Probably I was going to raise that question. Do you find that students are able to write? Because the validation issue then comes through, it comes to mind. Who does validation? Are you working with colleagues that are quite vested both in the subjects and in isiXhosa? Not Xhosa speakers. Speaking isiXhosa is one thing. Working with isiXhosa in a research program is another thing. Who are we working with becomes important, but that is great work. And you can tell that there is an ongoing kind of a program. Probably it is one comment that I really came here to say it has to be made, that there must be committed to these roles. We need to find people institutionally who are able, who would be committed only. Their roles should be sitting down. By sitting down, I don't mean literally, but I mean focus on developing the curriculum with glossar of concepts, all else that needs to be done, so that by the time it gets to a place where we say it is ready for utilization, then everyone else had an input. When there is time for review, it should be those people committed to those roles who continue to review. The treatment right now is that if there's Somi who's got a little bit of time somewhere, and whom we know, just come and do this for us, and you go, and someone else comes and says, no, Somi has used wrong concepts, let's redo it. We need to have those in our employment organogram. HR should be in these meetings to understand that we still need these roles as a committed kind of a role, so that there is an in-feeding or intertwining between that role and the department or the subject specific teacher, so that there is synergy throughout. Right. On the question of how do we work out the hegemony of English over students, it is a hegemony. It has never been done. And one of the reasons could be the issue of validating the concepts as well. Because students will sit and listen, oh, this is this course, but no, this could be meaning something else in this kind of a context. So there are those other issues that need to be played. It's just the hegemony of English. And stories of learning in this course are not really taught. And the historical background of how some of us went through the Bantu education system, and therefore vilifying everything about it without looking at what was working and what was working. If it wasn't working, what could have been done better? Because among other reasons that African languages are suffering that is because people believe that learning has to be done in English. I become a better doctor in cutting a heart if I speak English. The heart doesn't speak a language. It's just inhliziyo that needs to be operated. I'm touching mine. So, that needs to be operated, and the spatula is a spatula. Inality, khali, in every language. The procedure is the same. But you need someone who's so understanding of the process, and you need the language to understand the process. It will be the same in chemical engineering. Solution. All you need to understand, you need a language to speak to the solution so that you don't have a burning building because two solutions were mixed by people who just spoke English but did not really understand what is the effect of one tiny ion over this to cause an explosion. So this is what language does. It's not just a word, it's what is in the word, what's embedded in that meaning. So until we break through that to say, it's not sounding good in speaking, it's not sounding correct when speaking, it's not about not having while I'm thinking about what word to use. It's about the cognitive understanding of what I'm learning. Until we bridge that, then students as well will be part of that. And maybe they also need to be part of the debate, so that they understand that, because learning in your own language, as Krashan would say, doesn't take anything away from you. Instead, it allows you to access the second language better. It makes you understand the second language better. I hope that answers. Thank you.
Thank you, so yes. No, that there was a hand up there, and then I'll come to you.
Thank you. I have a comment. I just want to agree with you. You said it could be very nice if regional languages can be prioritized in all disciplines. I want to agree with you. In my undergrad, I did all regional languages here in the Western Cape, which is one at a home language level, the second one at a first additional level, then the third one at a communicative level. It really benefited me because I remember in my undergrad, in a lecture when you're doing the first year, you would be very divided. And then we only started in our second year in doing all. So because my home language was Xhosa, so I was already doing Xhosa, and I was also already doing English as a first additional language, so I had to do Afrikaans as a communicative. Also with my other classmates that were doing Afrikaans, let's say, as a home language, and English as the first additional language, so they had to do Xhosa. So in our second year, first of all, what language it did for us was to bring us together. We were very divided, because now I needed Afrikaans, so I had to go and approach someone who was speaking Afrikaans in my own lecture, which I did not have any relationship with. But now, because I was doing their language, so we kind of built those connections, and those were doing Xhosa, they had to come to us so that we can do. So there was a form of collaboration which really lasted for us, because after we graduated, we still have a WhatsApp group where we share opportunities. But also it did not stop there. After graduated, got my qualification. Because I've done Afrikaans now for 2 years in my undergrad, I was able to go and work in an Afrikaans school because I could exist in that space. So it could be very beneficial even for engineering students. So I was just thinking when you mentioned that, look, for example, for an engineering student, if let's say it's Xhosa now does Afrikaans communication, they won't be limited only to work or to be employed in spaces where Xhosa is spoken, but they can be considered in spaces where Afrikaans is spoken, like I was considered to go and work in a school, in an Afrikaans school. So I think I fully agree with what they said. Thank you. Thank you, Pastor.
Thank you, Somi. I'm going to take the second one before you respond.
My name is Usange Majoka. I am a second year student right in this institution. First of all, I would like to say, Uwe Mama, that I think I speak for everyone here when I say Sihluti with the information and the words that you have given us. They were very monumental, and In your speech, the beautiful speech that you have given us, you mentioned something. You said no one should graduate without having done isiXhosa if needs be in any institution in general. And you also said a student should be able to make a choice in writing in their comfortable language, like specifically you're talking about isiXhosa. And I think that for me was intriguing because I believe in some institutions there is whereby Afrikaans is treated as a language that is a home language to some of the students there. For example, I think in Wellington campus, there are courses or programs that are done in Afrikaans. Everything is like practically done in Afrikaans, literally. So I think I would like to, I can't wait for that to happen. I think maybe it will happen in the future. If it will happen, I can't wait for that to happen. But my question for you is, with that, with the fact that the part that students should be able to write in their comfortable languages, what are we trying to achieve by doing so? Is that our way of celebrating the 200 years of isiXhosa return? Thank you.
Maybe we need to give him a hand. He's running around. No, and what's the good for these questions? Right, what are we doing when we're doing that? That's the question. When we're doing that, we are in fact making sure that there are no professional students in the system who cannot exit with their thesis because they are grappling with the scientific aspect of English. Remember the sets of Englishes. Why would I be bogged down with saying to someone, go get it right, write it up again, do it well, go get help? It would be so fascinating for me to say, can you write what you are saying in isiXhosa? It might be comfortable for you to write in the kind of English that is not going to be passed in examination. But I want the one that by the time your thesis reaches the archive, the digitalized platform, it is an accepted document to everyone. That is one thing that you are doing, or using a phenomenon of avoidance. Avoiding spending resources on what could have been done well by ensuring that the celebration is lived. And what we have done for those who would want to utilize your thesis, we have created a job for someone who is going to be asking the other to go and create a translation for something that they want from your document, which makes sense to them for their own thesis. So instead of seeing that as a trouble, we should be seeing it as a gain, particularly with the national language policy that says to us, mind the languages that are in your region. We've got the 3 languages on the region. That is a beautiful story. I'm able to work in all our languages. But I also need to be able to contribute in the body, rather in producing or in contributing in the body of knowledge that is here. And it is to also show that when we say we are celebrating the 200 years, the work of orthography that was done then, that still kind of drives what we're doing when we're working in our languages, was not in vain, and it also acknowledges the dignity, the identity. It has some restorative measures to it. It's not just for restoration, but it's also for utilization, because there are people who still want to learn in the language that they understand better. And that allows us all to be part of the bigger society, the country. In this case, the province, where we are talking about the 3 languages, isiXhosa, English, and Afrikaans. So it's not just a job of tokenism or a show off, but it is a committed that says this is a language as well Somebody needs to listen. Somebody needs to see that there is no point that we are still talking about the need for intellectualization. It has language enough for it to be utilized, employed across disciplines. It's a matter of saying, somebody vuga and start doing something with it. Anyways.
Thank you very much. Somi, there's another hand up.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. I really enjoyed it. The one thing that stands out about it is the idea of having respect for things, let's call them foreign, because in certain cases the other languages are regarded as foreign, and the main aim should be to learn to speak English. I mean, I come from an Afrikaans background, and everybody said, you must learn English because that's the language of the business world, that will push you forward, etc., etc., etc. So now we must start thinking differently. And as I say, the one thing that stands out is about respect has to develop a new meaning to us, because it means respecting a language like isiXhosa and trying to use it. I know it's very difficult. I started with that, but it's not easy. But what you have done in a fairly relaxed manner, you know, not aggressively, is to say, change your mindset so that, you know, this other language or other languages may get more appreciation, more respect, and could be used more often. You don't have to be self-conscious about having a different language than English. Thank you so much.
Thank you. One last question maybe, or comment? Oh.
Wanthatha ithuba ulise kuye umuntu okhoyo. Andinguye umuntu othanda uthetha, kodwa ngenxa yentetho entle kangakuthe wayenza siyabulela kakhulu mama. I am a second year student who is doing the consumer behavior, and I got an opportunity to do it in isiXhosa. So it is very interesting, and I might say that I am assessed in a language that I'm comfortable with. And the fact that it facilitates effective communication within the community is the best part of it. Yabulela kakhulu kuse Dr. Ncube nguye wasifake kuyo i-consumer behavior ukuba siyenze ngesiXhosa.
Thank you, colleagues. I think we need to move on to the next item. Somi, thank you very much. I hope you're going to be with us until the end, because we...
Yes, no, it's fine. I'm going to be here until the end.
Okay, all right. Okay, thanks. Colleagues, we had hoped that we would have one of our colleagues, Linda Manashe, who is also a member of our language working group, to take us through the journey CPUT has taken in terms of the development of isiXhosa in particular. So unfortunately, she was unable to make it, but my colleague Nomkolisi does have a recording of what Linda was going to present today. So I'm going to call her to the fore now so that she can share that with us. Thank you, Nomkolisi.
Thanks. We might... As long as you can get yours quickly. I don't know if it will play the... Okay. Yeah, all right. Molweni nonke. Hi everyone. So as you have heard, Nomxolisi Janjis, and this is Linda Manashe's presentation. She is a colleague who has worked in developing multilingual glossaries and has been a huge part of our language working group. She recently graduated her master's, and the topic of the master's was around glossary development and how the glossaries were received by students and everyone involved. I think she talks about that a bit at the end of the presentation. So I'm just going to play the presentation for you now. Thanks.
Hello, everybody. My presentation today is about multilingualism and accessibility. My name is Program-Direkteur for Innovative Educational Technologies. I'll be speaking about multilingual practices or interventions at CPUT, the development of multilingual glossaries, and some findings on a study on the multilingual glossaries at CPUT. In the following slides, I will speak about multilingual interventions at faculties, the institutional language unit, and also speak about multilingual signage at CPUT. Multilingualism is a common practice at CPUT. Here are a few highlights per faculty. Applied sciences, they have translanguaging in lectures across all departments. Business management sciences have mother tongue tutorials in the law, entrepreneurship, tourism, accounting, and hospitality departments. In the engineering and build environment, there's translanguaging in tutorials and team teaching in isiXhosa and English for mathematics. Within education, the course offering in home language, first additional language, and conversational isiXhosa and Afrikaans, English or Afrikaans are used as the language of teaching and learning. In the informatics and design faculty, the design concepts and assessment action terms are translated to isiXhosa and Afrikaans. There's also a conversational isiXhosa short course for staff. Within the health and wellness sciences, there's multilingual glossaries, which also is practiced across all the other faculties at CPUT. More multilingual interventions at faculties include assistive language learning programs, faculty language labs, which are installed in various language software, faculty multilingual events that correlate with public holidays in support of national and international multilingualism, and online multilingual glossaries, which are developed for all faculties at CPUT. The language unit plays a big role in practice and promoting multilingualism at CPUT. There are Afrikaans and isiXhosa conversational skills short courses, translation of key documents for the institution, transcription and translation of disciplinary hearing documents, Department of Biotechnology and Consumer Science multilingual projects, multilingual courses in the healthcare profession, and the language labs in the IT center in Belleville campus, which are also installed with the language software. The language working group coordinates a language working group with all faculty coordinators as representatives, host multilingual events and competitions, which provide language supporting services, promote multilingualism at graduation ceremonies, and help with the development of the multilingual glossaries. In this slide, we see some of the examples of multilingual signage at campuses. This project was first rolled out at Wellington and Mobi campuses. Here we see more multilingual signage, including the multilingual touch screens, which were launched in 2017. This is the process adopted by CPUT to develop multilingual glossaries. Firstly, the lecturer together with the students identified difficult concepts. Then a list of concepts is refined and prioritized to 100 concepts, which are then translated. Translation feedback is overlooked and proofread by the language specialists in the language unit. And then a verification workshop is held where the translated concepts are debated and new terms are coined. Then the CPUT multilingual glossaries are accessible on mlg.cput.ac.za. The multilingual glossaries are available across all faculties in different departments within the faculties. Some of the multilingual glossaries have audio files which are available in isiXhosa, English, and Afrikaans. The Multilingual Glossaries Project is an ongoing project in support of multilingualism in teaching and learning at CPUT. The following section will share some findings on a study about the multilingual glossaries at CPUT, titled Online Multilingual Glossaries in Teaching and Learning Higher Education, a feasibility study. The use of English only as a medium of instruction still creates a barrier to learning for students for whom English is not a first language, and this often has a direct impact on whether they succeed or fail academically to date. To address this language challenge, CPUT developed an online multilingual glossaries tool to assist students learn and understand key concepts and concepts that are complex in prescribed programs through using first languages, which are primarily isiXhosa and Afrikaans. The study was conducted with first-year students enrolled in the applied law units, nursing, and horticultural science departments. A mixed method approach that includes a multiple case study was used to evaluate, analyze, and find patterns in how students from various fields of study interact with the languages and the use of the online multilingual glossaries tool. Data was collected through questionnaires, a quasi-experiment, focus group discussions with students, and as well as semi-structured interviews with lecturers. A quasi-experiment was conducted where students were given an opportunity to write a multiple choice exercise before and after they were introduced to the multilingual glossaries. In this figure are the results of the horticulture quasi-experiment. The students scored on average higher after using the multilingual glossaries than before they were introduced to the multilingual glossaries. For the law of contracts in the applied law unit, the students scored on average the same before and after they've used the multilingual glossaries. For the foundation of nursing practice in the nursing department, the students scored an average higher after they have used the multilingual glossaries than before they have been introduced to the multilingual glossaries. Lecturers confirmed that most students have a language challenge that affects learning of academic concepts. They also mentioned that language plays a big role in understanding academic concepts, mentioning the importance of mastering the professional language in their relative study field. Lecturers also find that the multilingual glossaries are useful in class for teaching and learning activities. Lecturers mentioned that students preferred more interactive content, such as videos. Some key findings of the research include the need for multilingual study materials and representation of other African languages across all three cases in the study. In terms of recommendations of the study, the development of subject-specific multilingual glossaries should be expanded to other academic programs and eventually become an integral part of all subjects and disciplines at CPUT. The multilingual glossaries platform should be enhanced to include the features that were recommended by the students, including adding more languages, but prioritizing South African languages to promote user engagement and satisfaction. The development of an app or an application for the CPUT multilingual glossaries. Further investigation and experimentation on the use of the existing CPUT online multilingual glossaries in class to date is strongly recommended. Thank you.
So basically with Linda's presentation, those are our accomplishments as CPUT. We try to focus on four main areas when it comes to the development of multilingualism. We look at academia, we look at special days, we also look at research. Sorry, I've just forgotten the specific terms that we use in our language implementation plan. But all of the activities that we have in the language unit or as the language working group are linked to those imperatives. And the last part, as I said initially, this was her master's thesis, and these are the results. I may have skipped some of the slides, or the slide where she is talking about the process, the glossary development process. And in that process, we try to involve everyone as possible. So we involve the lecturers, we involve the students, and we also get involved as language experts, and at times where we are able to have access to industry specialists who have an interest in language, then we also invite them to be part of the sessions, the verification sessions. So we try to have at least 100 terms to verify, but then again, we have other lecturers who say they have more terminologies, and if time allows, then we exceed that 100. So we end up verifying more. All the glossaries that we have verified, they are available on MLG. We can always share the slides with you after the Indaba. So the glossaries are available on mlg.cput.ac.za. And if there are lecturers here or students who would like to have glossaries developed for their own courses, they can always approach us
at the language unit. I'm also hoping that Somi, you'll find your graphic design terminology here as well in our website. Thanks. There was going to be a discussion after tea, but maybe we can continue with the discussion now. Just a few minutes of the discussion before we get to, we go out for tea. I'm not going to provide answers. I will just give a bit where I can, but this will be a discussion for everyone to get involved in.
Colleagues, Linda is not here, but non-policy has worked for some time with Linda. So if you do have a question that non-policy can answer, she will do so. Or if you have any comment to make on the presentation or even on what non-policy has explained, please feel free to do so.
Thank you very much for such a wonderful presentation. Mine maybe is not even directed to Linda's presentation, but it is maybe another look to say, is there some level of a study guide that also prepares lecturers to be dealing with the glossary of concepts? Because many times we're talking about students that are ready or underprepared for the curriculum to such that we develop these to access. Is there something that is prepared for us to prepare ourselves for this? I'm raising this question because part of what I didn't say was that now we're really embarking on something that also looks at us in terms of language delivery, in terms of not necessarily retraining, but I remember the terms that we talk about that carry some kind of uniformity. So that if they have to be expanded on, it should be true lecturing. But is there some level of a study guide in the same? Because this is really beautiful, and Linda should really be commended for such a great work. And thank you for presenting her work. It's really informative. Thank you.
Is there any study guide, non-policy?
Some kind of guide. Okay, I think you are giving us more work. Everyone is here. The faculty language coordinators are here, and the institutional language coordinator is here. So maybe we can look into that, because I think with all these glossaries, we rely on the lecturers taking them up and saying, okay, I would like to explore this and explore with the interest of my students as well. But we haven't really formalized the guidance for lecturers in terms of a study guide. So I think we all assume that lecturers, because they wanted this, then they know exactly what's needed. But it's something into for the future.
Thank you. Sonia, I think that applies to students as well. You know, I expressed a concern. We had a workshop, a senior language community workshop yesterday, where I expressed a concern about students' awareness and IE. And we are developing these glossaries for the students to benefit from. So they need to be aware of their existence, and they need to be taught how to use them. So that applies to the students as well. Thank you. Colleagues, in the absence of any questions or comments, I think we should have gone for tea at 11. I think we should go do that now, and then be back here at 11:30, at which time we will go to the next item, to the next keynote address. Thank you very much.
Colleagues, we're going to resume with our program. I hope you enjoyed your tea, and thank you very much for coming back. I am now going to move on to the next item, which is a keynote addressed by Dr. Ignatius Teacher, who is our own member of the Language Working Group at CPUT, also member of the Senate Language Committee. He is located in the Faculty of Applied Sciences. We had tried to get somebody from external, somebody from outside, to give us the second keynote, and unfortunately the person we invited, after she had accepted, had health problems just closer to this language Indaba, so she couldn't make it. And so I approached the Language Working Group and about this, wherein I suggested that Dr. Teacher be the one who does this on behalf of the external, instead of the external speaker, and he agreed to do that. I do think that there's a lot of work that we have done at CPUT, which is worth being shared at this event, in addition to what non-policy has already shared on behalf of Linda. Right, so I'm going to take this opportunity to ask Dr. Liesl Hudson one more time to come to the front to introduce Dr. Teacher, to do a proper introduction of Dr. Teacher. Do you have the...
So I'm not going to suckle with my laptop for this one, because as Dr. Sebolai said, Dr. Teacher is in our language working group, and I have the pleasure of working with him, alongside him, for the past, since 2018. So he is, I think, now soon to be a Taal Fellow, a teaching advancement at university. He was part of the 4th cohort, and they finished off now in July, I think, in Durban. And so I start from current to back. As part of Taal, Dr. Teacher looked at multilingual glossaries, and he involved his students in the development thereof. So hopefully, I hope he's going to touch on that in his presentation. Since 2018, he's been involved in many projects, and when I think of Dr. Teacher, I think, or in my mind, I visualize his reading and writing quizzes that he has annually with his students in applied sciences in their well-resourced reading and writing lab. So they're one of the few who have a separate laboratory in their faculty. And on a more personal note, Dr. Teacher, yes, he's on the D6 campus, but he stays in the beautiful leafy suburb of Boston. And I know that because I often pass him, and when I looked for a school for my son, go to Boston Primary, that's where my kids went to. So he's always there to share not only language-related advice, postgrad supervision advice, but he's just a knowledgeable other that you can always depend on. So Dr. Teacher, looking forward to listening to you today. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hassan, for all the very kind words. Molweni, Huemora, good morning, Sanibonani. Ladies and gentlemen, you are welcome to our language Indaba for 2023. If Somi was not my very, very good friend from a long while back, I would say she burst my, is this on? She burst my bubbles in what she presented, a very beautiful presentation that she did. Is it on? It doesn't seem to. Okay.
But I would rather say that she challenged me. She challenged me to do a bit more than what I think I have been doing. Thank you so much, Somi, for really provoking our thoughts, but also provoking us into more action. So the presentation I give today seeks to give an overview of the language projects, the multilingual projects that we run in the Faculty of Applied Sciences. And it then selects 3 of these projects to offer a deeper reflection on. So the Applied Sciences presentation here today is not intended to serve as a model, but rather as an example of what all the 6 language coordinators are doing at CPUT. And we obviously do this with the great support from the language unit and Fundani. So the multilingual vision that has shaped the projects that I'm sharing with you today draws on various documents, various frameworks, plans, and of course policies and literature that I would not bore you with. I would simply mention them in passing because it is my belief that most of us here are very familiar with the literature, but also with what is in these documents, such as the Language Policy Framework for Higher Education and the other documents that are listed here. And of course, the CPUT language policy, with its very laudable multilingual vision, is a useful document that one has really been shaped with, and our practices have been shaped with. And one also considers the CPUT Vision 2030 strategic plan that is crafted around the values of oneness and smartness. And oneness, language is a key component of oneness. And please signal me when the sound is not on, because it seems it's playing tricks here. So the presentation I share with you today is a show and tell show. It's a show and tell presentation, right? So I wouldn't be going into all the theories and everything and critiquing various aspects of what we're doing, but simply showing and telling what we are doing in the Faculty of Applied Sciences and by extension at the institution. So just to mention some literature, multilingualism has been really, really recommended by various scholars, including Taylor and Mayer, decades ago, and they present the position that in a context such as ours at CPUT and by extension South Africa, when the knowledge journey through the curriculum is extended beyond the stringent language of instruction, it may significantly enrich the epistemological process through what? Imagery, symbolism, concept engagement, and knowledge acquisition. And this will lead to a sophisticated understanding of the content that is presented to students. Neville Alexander, who was at the forefront of this work for so many years, cautions that, or rather cautions against the folly of believing that an English second language based educational system can lead to a quality education for all and guarantee widespread excellence in most learning areas. And there is a lot more recent work on multilingualism and its value in a context such as ours and in South Africa. So, more practically for CPUT, more practically for this discussion, the initiatives that I share with you today are offshoots of, I would say, our ponderings, and of course my ponderings on how to attend to what may be considered. And I highlight may, because I'm not too certain that this will apply to everyone or everyone will agree with this, what may be considered as anomalies in the domain of language, in our context at CPUT, in the context of our nation, and of course, the continent. And these anomalies have shaped my thinking around what I do as a language coordinator in my faculty, as a member of the language working group at CPUT. And I'll touch on some of these anomalies, one of which is the language of instruction anomaly. And I hope this is visible, slightly visible. And when you look at this, you will see that English, which is the language of instruction, at CPUT is the home language of 31% of our students, and I think it could be lower. I think it's much lower. These are from the SASE report of 2022, and Dr. Cupido will be much more familiar with this. And languages that hold greater predominance in terms of number of speakers in South Africa are relegated to second or to the periphery, right? I may say that. Then, the second anomaly, and I must be very careful and cautious when I say this, is the emphasis on regional languages in the context of, and this is very important, shifting linguistic repertoires in our classes. And when you look at what I am sharing with you here, you will see that in the Faculty of Applied Sciences in particular, and I'm not sure what the case is in other faculties because I did not check, but in the Faculty of Applied Sciences in particular, 50% of our student body is isiZulu speakers. 50% of our student body is isiZulu speakers. And not to dampen anything that was said about isiXhosa here today, on the basis of this study, only 20% of our speakers are isiXhosa speakers. So that tells us that the language repertoires of our students are continuously shifting, and we need to shift with these changes in the background of our students. And I'm not sure whether I'm recommending a reconsideration of the policy that prescribes regional languages or a reconsideration of the regional languages when we review our policy. I leave that up to the policy, to my second boss here, Dr. Sebolai and his team. The third anomaly relates to what I think is often, and not just in our context, but in many contexts, a top-down rather than a bottom-up language development approach, where we do not fully include the key stakeholders that we are targeting with our initiatives from the inception and right through the project, or we may not. And I do not want to say it in very certain terms. The fourth anomaly relates to the low uptake of some of the language projects and initiatives that we develop and we invest time, resources on. And not too long ago, I requested Google Analytics of the use of our multilingual glossaries, and I wasn't too impressed, considering the work that gets put in. So there is indifference to some of these resources that we develop. Of course, perhaps today's session may be a bit telling of the level of commitment or indifference that we may be experiencing in language work. And the fifth anomaly that is personal relates to multilingual academics or staff in general, like myself, in a context where linguistic inclusivity is very vital. And therefore, we have to find smart ways of ensuring that we are multilingual in our practices, in spite of our monolingualism rather than just throw our hands in the air and say, what can we do? So, based on this, we have designed and implemented a number of projects over the years, some lasting over 14 years, I must say. Now, the first of these is the Afrikaans and Isixhosa courses for students which are running currently. And what I must say is, from time to time, we approach the language unit and they are able to assist. And in other instances, we need to find ways. And again, we cannot just stop there and say, because the language unit doesn't have the resources to do it at this time, we cannot. So what we've done over the years is, we have been very strategic in finding resource persons that can assist us with this. And over in the recent past, I have sought to appoint qualified, mostly doctorate and master students at some of our sister universities around in the disciplines of linguistics and languages, who then assist with some of these projects. And at the present moment, these courses are being offered to students in our agriculture department, as well as consumer science, food and nutrition, by people we recruited as teaching assistants and then trained to render the service rather than depending on a language unit that may already, of course, they've promised to come on board next year, but we couldn't just let the opportunity slide this year when we saw interest. And we offer this on a needs basis, right? When we advertise and departments show interest. Then the second project I want to just touch on, give an overview of, is our effort to translate important documents in the faculty. And one of the most important documents in my view is this orientation guide, the first year student guide. That is the first document a student encounters when they enter university at the orientation stage. And we've translated this over the years into Afrikaans and Isixhosa, and it is uploaded on this page, and students access it. What we need to do is to undertake a study on the preferences, the language preferences that students exercise in relation to the English version versus the versions in the other languages. And again here, I must be very thankful to the language unit for assisting us with the translations, and of course with the translations of corrections, because we have to correct and update this document every year, and they've always been very willing to assist with that. The next project I want to mention is what Dr. Hudson mentioned, the multilingual reading quiz. The reading quiz has been running for over 10 years, but over the past few years, we turned it into a multilingual exercise where students are given the option to read material either in English or any of the other two languages, or in all three languages, and they are given the option to take questions in any of the languages or in all of the languages. And of course, my good friend and colleague, Mr. Jaggers, who is here, assists with Afrikaans, and we have our library partners that we collaborate with, who also assist in designing some of the questions in Isixhosa, and I think in one instance, Ms. Yankees also assisted. So this is just for illustration of the nature of questions. Question 21 has an option in English, an option in Isixhosa, an option in Afrikaans, and students are then given the choice to take their questions in any of the languages. This is a project that intends to develop and to grow the culture of reading. But through that, we also give students the opportunity to do this in their home languages, and where it has happened, students have found it really, really enriching and affirming of them and of the languages that they bring along with you. This is just a picture of our final, the final of the reading quiz this year, which we normally time to coincide with International Literacy Day as a commemoration of the day. And this is in our lab. our Communication and Language Center lab that Dr. Hudson talked about on this campus. The next project, colleagues, so as we all know, ChatGPT is taking over the world. So with the advent of ChatGPT since 2022, what we have attempted doing is using ChatGPT to generate language resources. So we have circumvented the process, and what we would do is, rather than the process that Ms. Yankees pointed us to in Linda's presentation, rather than sitting back, appealing to the lecturer to generate 100 terms for me to initiate the process, I generate the terms using ChatGPT. I supply the lecturer with the terms. The lecturer works with colleagues to refine the terms, eliminate, add new terms, verify the English definitions, and we haven't yet gotten to you, Linda, Nonkolisi, and Dr. Sebolai, because the two glossaries that we have generated are still with lecturers in the departments, in agriculture and in chemistry. And we are hoping that with time, they would verify this and refine especially the terms and the English definitions and return this to you. Return this to us, and we'll then approach you and see how we take it forward to ensure that what may have been junk generated by ChatGPT is purified by human intervention. Because as we know, we have to work collaboratively with these AI tools to achieve the necessary results. And I cannot allow it for students to simply use ChatGPT to generate these terms, because students will take what ChatGPT gives them. So we have to bring the human intervention to really refine it and ensure that from my engagements with colleagues who master the languages, ChatGPT struggles with some of the languages, some of the African languages, more than others, right? So we need to really make use of it, but ensure that it is a collaborative process between us and ChatGPT. Then the next project that I want to showcase is the process of translating, not terminology, but lecture material from PowerPoints to recorded lectures in class to guides such as you will see here, a guide on how to answer exam questions. And we have been running this project, which didn't last too long, and if I am tempted to, I could share that, but I'm hoping that we will rejuvenate it and pull other colleagues on board. And again, here the language unit assisted us with this project. So I'm sharing here a few reflections. One of the things we do is each and every one of our projects is followed by feedback from participants. I may not be sharing it here, but each of these projects is followed by reflections, feedback from participants, and you would see what some of the students say here, mostly positive, except for the last student who says it did not change anything because most people communicate in English, which is very common to hear, right? Which again is what we have been talking about this morning. But generally, it was very well received. Then the next thing that I'm showcasing is what I have as a monolingual attempted to apply in my own teaching. One of the things I've come to realize is these multilingual glossaries lie where they are, and they are not used simply because we do not design our teaching and our assessment to enable the use of these resources. So what I do is, for example, when I teach effective reading, I'm a communication skills lecturer. Effective reading and academic writing based on a text that is related to the discipline. I get students I design exercises and quizzes that would necessitate the use of these resources. And in this specific instance, the students had to pick out a concept that was very, very useful to their understanding of what we were doing, that was relevant to the discipline, and they would firstly define the concept without consulting the glossary in English and in their home language. They would offer a lexical definition of the term, and they will offer an encyclopedic definition of the term. So I take them through a process. And once they've consulted the glossary, or interestingly, our glossaries are limited to 3 languages, and some of the students do not speak these 3 languages, so they would be encouraged to consult any other resource that offers them guidance in the home language. And once they've consulted the multilingual resource, they redefine the term. And I've noticed that in taking them through this process, students come out with very, very rich symbolic definitions, because they are not just defining the term, they are also explaining the term. And one of the terms that students have worked with in a sociology-related course was the term family, where the multilingual glossary defined it, a sociology glossary that we developed, was they defined it on the basis of, what is it again? Hereditary. A limited definition of furthermore biological definition. But students, in working with the term, expanded the definition to include people of a common ancestry. They define it within their own context on the basis of the culture that they come from and how they understand what the word family to mean. So, and again, reflection is very important. Each and every one of these exercises is followed by a reflection. And there's a short reflection here that I want to read. Overall, it was an enlightening and empowering experience that highlighted the incredible potential of language resources in fostering cross-cultural understanding, which served as a bridge, connecting different linguistic words and helping us express ideas with precision and clarity. So this was a group of students that went through this. So I now pull in my TAs who have competence in these languages to work with me in correcting the work that was submitted to me. The next project I want to talk through very briefly is the multilingual subtitling and dubbing project that Mr. Jaggers mentioned earlier. So a year or so ago, we collaborated with the Unit for Academic Literacy at the University of Pretoria, myself, Mr. Jaggers, and our Teaching and Learning Coordinator, Professor Nakoda, to submit a proposal to SADILA. It was successful and we were funded for this project, which allows us to generate subtitles and do dubbing on subject discipline material, discipline videos. So once we've dubbed and subtitled these videos, we then roll them out, and we're doing so in our agriculture department because the videos are in the area of animal anatomy. And I had intended to play one of the videos, but I had technical challenges as I was preparing for the presentation. So, during the actual implementation, students are given the option to watch the videos in either English with subtitles in Istiklosa, Afrikaans, or Sepedi, or in the same language, subtitle and video in the same language. And we have really unearthed very, very interesting indicators of student preferences when they watch videos. And this is followed by a quiz that also gives us an indication of their level of understanding. And based on that, we would be able to evaluate whether watching the video in a language other than English enables better understanding of the video. So, following this aspect of the project, students are then selected and put through an eye tracking exercise where they would watch the video with subtitles, with an eye tracking device, and the device will track what their gaze is on, what they focus on when they watch the videos. Do they focus on the presenter? Do they focus on the animal that is being operated and explained? Do they focus on the subtitles? Do they focus just on the keyboard? What do they focus on? And what is the implication of what they are focusing on? We're really excited about this project, and we really look forward to the results that we'll be working on sometime in early October. We've planned a few days workshop just to work through the data that we have collected at CPUT and at the University of Pretoria. So in this video here, the student is working on doing the eye tracking exercise. In this, so we motivated them. We had an incentive where we had a lucky draw, and we really needed to put them in, considering some of the anomalies that we mentioned earlier. And then these are students watching their videos, and I hope there are not too many sensitive viewers here with what I'm projecting. Then we have, I titled this intentionally, Multilingualism Across the Borders, French language courses for students, because we think our internationalization vision requires that we do not limit our multilingualism just to the region, right? Not just to the nation, but we should go across borders. And I think Ms. Yankees would testify how vibrant and radical our students were when we reviewed the current language policy on the inclusion of languages beyond our borders. And we eventually did, right? What is the language? Kiswahili is actually in our language policy presently. So, over a period of 3 years, we ran a French language course for students and staff. Luckily, we were able to get funding from the French embassy for this project, and the funding only lasted 3 years, and we couldn't continue beyond the 3 years. But there are 3 very significant things I want to point out about the value of this course. One of our HODs in the faculty, in a discipline that should have strong ties with France, participated in this course. And she has become very, very competent in the use of French. She speaks French, and because I speak French, I can easily assess her competency. She is perfect in her French over the 3 years that we offer this course. And she travels to France with ease and communicates with ease, and when she goes with our colleagues at CPUT, she is the guide. The second is 3 of our students who participated in this project were selected and sent to the Reunion Island. I think it was for 2 weeks to practice their French. And we can imagine how significant it could be for our students to be given that exposure. The next is one of our students who participated in this program, and I deleted the names of the participants in this cohort. This is one of the cohorts on the program. I deleted the names, but all the other information is left there. One of the participants in this specific cohort is presently in France, registered for a master's degree. And she tells me how significant this project was to prepare her and perhaps to inspire her to seek these pastures, and I dare call them greener pastures. And to top it all, students were awarded certificates. Of course, students who completed and qualified and wrote their exams and passed, they were awarded certificates, their diplôme d'études en langue française, which is an official qualification offered by the French Department of Education to certify competencies of non-French native speakers in the French language. So, in my view, very valuable course. I wrote proposal upon proposal at the end of the 3 years, but we couldn't get this funding, which we got in collaboration with the international office at that stage. The next project I want to just mention is, and for our colleagues who say that we are directing ourselves towards multilingualism and in some instances doing so at the expense of the English language. That is the language of instruction. Supporting students in the English language, which is the language of instruction. You're obviously very right. It is absolutely necessary that while we seek the development of indigenous African languages, we should never ignore and relegate English language and English language support. So, this could be about 10, maybe less than 10 years ago, we generated this course, English proficiency course, for our students. And at that stage, it was done with the assistance of the TA that are appointed to work with me on language issues. And so the course is there, it is packaged, and I'm just pointing to the content here. This is just the content page of the course because I could not show a lot more than this. So the course is there. On a needs basis, we unearth it and we offer it to our students. And presently, we are offering it to students across the faculty, and I dare say we are offering it to 6 students only in the whole faculty. But those 6 students cannot be left behind. And interestingly, all 6 students that we are offering it to now are French-speaking, so they are not nationals. But the question I ask is, do national students not have challenges when it comes to the English language? I think they do. But because it is voluntary, we can only offer it to students who are, one, identified by the departments and directed to us, or students that we recruit. So again, my 2 language TAs with my supervision are offering this course now, and I come in to teach certain aspects of it, which I of course draw from my communication course. And again, a lot of our communication skills colleagues have always asked the question, or rather said, language is not my responsibility. And a lot of our content colleagues say, language is not my responsibility. But this is my view. Once you have accepted a student here with the challenges that they bring along, you must attend to those challenges, and I think it's our duty to attend to those challenges. Even if we have to teach grammar at the most basic level, we should be doing it, and we must do it. And for us to do this, the first step to the process is these students write a diagnostic test, which we then use to determine the level at which they are, the level of need, and the intervention that we can offer as a remediation for what they bring along as challenges. We do not do this just at the undergraduate level, but also at the postgraduate level. Over the past many years, we have had a postgraduate language and writing course. And this is just a partial report of some of the students that have been through our postgraduate language and writing course. So we do it in 2 formats. In some instances, we would go in and give a short workshop to these students on a specific aspect of writing. But in most instances, it takes the form of an editing service. And these are some students who have been assisted. I cut out the students' names, but you can see the supervisors' names are left there. Their department, the type of work that was edited, journal, thesis, research, and the topics, the total number of pages, the duration of the time taken to complete the work, and the status, whether it was completed or whether it has been completed. So this is just a partial report in one of the years that we offer this. And again, this is running presently with the support again of my 2 language TAs. Now, I want to offer a bit of deeper reflection on 3 of our projects. One of which is the isiXhosa and Afrikaans courses for staff in the faculty. Just very briefly, the process entails recruiting participants the preceding year, the previous year. So very soon our call is going out for participants for 2024. Once they sign up, we go through the procurement process or the process of arranging with the language unit to offer the course. And over so many years, we use external service providers, especially Xhosa Fundis. Xhosa Fundis is a very competent service provider, but a bit costly as well. And we got funding from our faculty for this over so many years, and these are some of our participants in one of the online courses during COVID. Then we negotiate times with the participants because, as we know, the lives of staff in general and academics in particular are really, really overloaded. We negotiate suitable times, and then we offer and we evaluate. And then I just thought I should share a few of the feedback points from some of the colleagues who have participated on this course in previous years. So in this slide, the colleagues speak quite favorably about the course, and I think I wouldn't go through all of this, but I want to highlight the fact that this course has significance not just for operations in the academic space, but also personally for some of the colleagues. This colleague says, the lady who cleans my house, people at shops, filling stations, love it when you try and say hello, thank you, in their home language. And as Tata Mandela tells us, he's getting to their hearts by doing this, right? And there are a lot of other reflections. And one of the things I think is, this colleague here says, we relate better. They speak English that is not their mother tongue. And speaking the little isiXhosa that I do builds bridges between us. And this should help us. It has helped me. My teacher here, Teacher Lakazi, my teacher here knows I've taken isiXhosa upon isiXhosa upon isiXhosa course, and I am still far from being competent. And that has brought me to a point of empathy and compassion for our students who struggle with the English language. So there are some really valuable points that they make here. Then there are the usual things. I don't think I integrated this into my work. There's a difference between taking a conversational course and really applying language work in your teaching, and I think this is merely for conversation. And again, the usual complaint about time, which is the overarching reason why some of these projects do not run for the whole year or do not have participants participate for the whole year. Now, what is my suggestion in relation to these language courses? And perhaps I should share a personal story. When I first joined CPUT, with my, and I hope she wouldn't mind me referencing her here, with my good friend and colleague, Tanya Stevenson, in your faculty, Kevin, we were hungry for a course in isiXhosa. We couldn't find one at that stage at CPUT. So when I became language coordinator in 2014, the very first thing I did was to roll out an isiXhosa and an Afrikaans and a French language course for staff, because I did not want any other colleague to come into my faculty and hunger for it and not find it. And I really think the way to go is to formalize this. And I think we should, in our induction programs, ensure that every single staff who comes through CPUT and is not a speaker of any of these languages, as part of their induction, is enabled to take the course, just to whet their appetite, and they can go out and then improve themselves. But I think that is my view. It should be formalized, and it should be made a part of the staff induction program. Then the next program I want to talk, or project I want to talk about, is the multilingual tutorials that we run in our faculty. And again, these are running presently in mathematics and in food science and technology. So the process we follow is, firstly, appoint and train a tutor. And Ms. Yankees would, one of the things I've been writing on is seeking the right support to achieve some of these things, because I would not by myself, partly because of my own limitations. And one of the things Ms. Yankees has assisted me with was to find or to assess the language competency of the persons who would offer multilingual tutorials. Because it doesn't necessarily go that they will be trained as tutors and they will tutor the course, because an additional and a very important skill is the ability to tutor in Isikosa or in Afrikaans, right? So non-collegiate would often engage with the person, evaluate them, and advise me whether they are appointable. But one of the primary things I also look for is whether they did the language at high school level, or at least pass it, or even pass it at high school level. Then we'll appoint, and they will be trained as any other tutor is trained, and then we'll offer additional training on how to tutor in a multilingual setting. Then we market it in the faculty. We engage with the lecturer, who is an important key stakeholder, because while I administer the course, the language specialist, rather the content specialist, is the lecturer, and the lecturer has to work with the multilingual tutor. In fact, the lecturer has to recruit the students, because this is on a voluntary basis, since we do not offer it to all the students in the program. And then we negotiate and schedule times, and in some instances we even run this on Saturdays. And I think presently we may be running them on, no, we're not. We're running them late on Fridays as well. Then we offer, we monitor, and we evaluate. And these are students in one of the sessions last year, and they are also running now. So you can see there's intense, this is what I meant by going down and dirtying the hands. And I sit in and I observe, and yeah, so I'm sorry, these reflections are not too clear, because I couldn't find my original Google thing. So I went into a report I had written and extracted this information. So some of the evaluation points were attending the multilingual tutorials improved my understanding of the topics that the lecturer had covered. And you'll see here that 86% of students indicated that the multilingual tutorials improved their understanding. And they say a good number of things here. My performance improved from the first test I wrote, and I have a better understanding now. I can even explain to someone, when I first started classes, I was doing really bad. I'm improving. With the use of the language and face-to-face, they can better grasp. And so these are some of the evaluation points, and you can see value in it. The tutorial discussions were done mostly in which language? And you'll see that 61% of students indicate that the tutorials were done mostly in English and Isikosa. So there was a combination of those two languages. And then during the tutorials, I understood the explanations better and benefited more when the discussions were in which language. So they understood when the discussions were in both languages. So they better understood. And that's a thing I cannot see here, so I can't imagine what I'm doing to you presently. So 59% of the students understood better when the discussions were in a combination of English and Isikosa. And of course, we have 13% when the discussions were in English, and 27% when they're in isiXhosa only. So these are very important, significant indicators, and I wouldn't be going through some of the reflections that the qualitative reflections that I have here. Then, in future, would you like multilingual tutorials to be in other subjects other than just mathematics? And 100% of students indicated that yes, they want multilingual tutorials in all of their subjects, not just in mathematics. It will improve our marks, it makes better understanding, because the module will be assessed in English, but if I learn it in my home languages, I will be better understanding the concept. In science, it would be effective, I believe. Okay, so 100% is a key indicator there. The multilingual tutorials improved my performance in the assessment. And again, 100% of students here indicated that the multilingual tutorials improved their assessment. I got 80 and 90. Ever since I started attending the am I still on? So, ever since I started attending the tutorials, I got good grades in this module. I was able to attempt a problem I couldn't attempt before. So generally, very positive response. During the multilingual tutorials, it was easy to find appropriate isiXhosa words and terms. And again, now, students felt 90% of students felt that it was easy to find the concepts and the terms to explain in the language. And again, this again counters and subverts our perhaps deficit discourses around languages as not having sufficient resources to teach mathematics and the sciences and other disciplines in them. So since it was a math tutorial, the tutor used instruction terms in English words such as simply, factorize. So the tutor used English terms in these instances and then offered the explanations in isiXhosa, right? Yes, some words were too complex to understand, but using isiXhosa to provide alternate meanings of these words was helpful, right? So there are ways of working around what we see as stumbling blocks to doing some of these things. And the students are pointing us to some of those ways in which we can function. So a student just affirmatively says, yes, it is my home language. Therefore, it was easy to find the concepts. The tutorials in isiXhosa made me feel that my identity was valued and respected, because it's also about identity, right? When you use a student's language to teach. Being taught in my own language is effective and it makes the words easy. Yes, because English isn't our home language. So teaching in our languages we spoke from birth would be really beneficial and valuable. Anything taught is better learned by home language, not opposing English. And I'm quoting verbatim. It helps students understand the concept. So generally, very positive outlook to the multilingual tutorial program. And how am I doing with time, Dr. Sebolai? 3. Don't say. Okay. I would have wanted to play a few videos here, but let me just do one. Is the sound good? Okay. Considering my time limitations, I can share this and you can listen in your own time. And I have a whole lot of them. So I recorded a 1-hour video with students on these projects. It's a very interesting one, and I've listened to it and I've watched it over and over and over, and every time I go to it, I rejoice in some of the things that students said in the videos, and I can also share the link with to the video with you. And I use students in our media study department because we have to draw on all these places. So, based on what has been said here, I'm just leaving you with these questions. Are African language such as Xhosa equipped and resourced for learning and teaching science and other disciplines? Is there a desire for this, and is there a willingness? Desire and willingness. Can this be done at CPUT? At what cost can it be done at CPUT? So the final project that I would have given a bit more time to, but because of constraint, I'll just sweep through, is the participatory multilingual glossary development in 7 languages and not the 3 languages in our region. So, again, the process followed here was, and I must mention here that this is linked to my Taal project that Dr. Hudson just mentioned, that I just completed. Discussion with faculty, language committee, invitation to students to participate across departments, volunteering students sign up, shared file from which we all worked, 3-day-long workshops on Saturdays because those were the only times we could work on this, ethics application submitted, submission to 6 language specialists. So the completed document has now been submitted to language specialists, and this is just on the site a video of students on one of these Saturdays developing the glossary from scratch. Now, here is just an illustration of the rough glossary as developed by students at that stage. In English, isiXhosa, Afrikaans, Sepedi, Tshivenda, isiZulu, and Sesotho. So, the lecturer doesn't generate the terms and hand them. The lecturer doesn't generate the terms, translate them, and hand them to the students. The students do it from scratch. They start with the generation of terms, to the definition of terms, to the translation of terms in these language groups. So students do it all, and I simply supervise them, and I simply call on help from colleagues who can assist where necessary. And this is a version of the glossary in its second stage. It is in track changes format from one of the language specialists that it was sent to, the Sepedi language specialist. And these are the changes that they have made to the students' original document. In addition to the changes they have made, they also offer some input on the work that students did, such as they omitted big chunks of text in the translations. They omitted big chunks of text in the translations, such as words, phrases, parts of speeches. They summarized sentences, and in the process they left out important information, namely words, phrases. 2 terms and their definitions were not provided. Students did not define 2 terms out of 105 terms. You can imagine the kind of work that we did over this sustained period of time with students, and you can see how invested they are in the project. These are students at work on this multilingual glossary in the video that is playing soundless on the site. So in spite of whatever the product was, students invested themselves in this. And now, I wouldn't play these videos. Again, these are students reflecting on the process of generating these multilingual glossaries, and they offer some really interesting insights that I will touch on. Oh, no, I do not intend to play you. Now, I wouldn't also be looking, in addition to the video recording, students were given opportunity to reflect in writing on the work that they did in developing the multilingual glossary. And based on the reflections here, as well as what they said in the session that was recorded, I drew a number of preliminary reflections on the work that students did and how they experienced it. So all of this is based on student reflections. Firstly, I believe a bridge was established between home and the academic space as students called home for assistance. During all 3 sessions on these Saturdays, students were on their phones, WhatsApp, phone calls to their families. So they basically brought their families into the classroom space and into the learning experience. And some of the parents were really amazed that my child left Limpopo, and I knew the language that they speak in Limpopo would not be covered at CPUT, but my child is calling me from CPUT about this term and this translation. So it was really interesting to see parents and sisters, and I'll show you those who were brought in. Then it was found that the languages are fluid and students are versatile in languages, as they could quickly switch from using one language to another in this session quite easily, quite fluently, and of course our languages are very similar, right? Language varieties was a very important indicator. Language varieties should be considered when developing multilingual resources, and students spoke quite strongly about this and the language variety that they selected to use and why they selected a particular variety. And students engaged deeply with the symbolic and contextual meaning of terms rather than doing word-for-word translations. They really engaged with the symbolism embedded in the word, the connotations embedded in the words, and it was really, really deep engagement, not just superficial work. The project improved linguistic competence it improved linguistic competence, and it was developed and indigenous languages that had become distant and removed from the academic projects and students' life. So students really said that this brought me to speaking my home language again, engaging with my home language again, and I really hope you watch the video if I share it with you. They experienced identity reaffirmation, identity formation, identity negotiation, and identity adaptation in transiting between one language group to another, in engaging. And in fact, some students who were Isikosa language speakers selected to work in Afrikaans. So a lot happened in this whole process. They had a significant life-changing and transformative experience working on the project. And what is the way forward? The verifications will be done. A final workshop will be held with students to look at what was verified by the language specialist. Remember what happened? What happens with our normal multilingual glossary development project is the lecturer develops, translates, the language specialist verifies, and it only comes back to students later. Students only come in to verify what has been done. But in this case, the language specialists are verifying and correcting what students did. Okay, I'll run out of it now. Then, the next very important thing for me is I intend to design a framework on how to use multilingual glossaries effectively, speaking partly to what was said about what is there for lecturers, and this framework would be made available to everyone. And I have to run through all of this now, and these are some of the change aspects that I think would have come out of this project. And I wouldn't be getting you to do your reflections, which I intended to. I thought I had all the time in the world. And finally, to achieve linguistic inclusivity at CPUT, I think this is what language workers must be. And I intentionally call myself a language worker, just as we have a social worker and all the like, and we must be all of these things here. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Teacher.
Oh, by the way, my former dean, when he called me in for KPA, he always said, Dr. Teacher, you're not doing this and that because of this your language thing. And I'm really passionate about it. And that's why I'm indirectly apologizing for going over time. And that's always what I was, always passionate about my language things. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Teacher. I think you should have told me that you would need 2 hours to do your presentation. I would have gladly allocated you the time. Thank you very much. Colleagues, I don't have to emphasize Dr. Teacher's passion about the work that you do. You can see it yourself. But before, I'm going to invite a few questions and comments on his presentation. But before I do that, I need to announce that we distributed the evaluation forms during tea time, which I kindly ask that you complete and leave them there. You don't have to send them anywhere. Just complete the evaluation forms, and then they will be collected at the end of the workshop. Any questions, comments for Dr. Teacher, colleagues?
Thank you very much. Mine are not even questions, they're just comments. I'm going to run through them. They're 4 but short. Thank you very much for such a wonderful presentation. And indeed, it is very true that Dr. Teacher is quite passionate about his work. And this is quite interesting because all that is happening, the introduction, or rather the production of 7 languages, is the playing out of the national language policy that says each region should be focusing on the languages that are available there. So it is not a contradiction that it says focus on the 3 languages of the region, because it also makes provision to use multilingualism, bilingual education, bilingual instruction, to ensure that the languages that are in each classroom are then also catered for, which means the teacher from the very onset is in the mind of the planner to say, while we focus on 3 languages if you're in the Western Cape, and 10 languages, or 11 or 12 if you're in Joburg, and 4 that could be in another province. But do not negate English as the language of communication. Do also not negate other languages that emerge because of the diversities and the movement, as you say, as your paper portrays. So this is very great work, because it also follows on the work such as understanding mathematics and science, and that was produced elsewhere, which also had more than 5 languages, although the province focused on 3. So you are doing a very great job in ensuring that the mandate of the language policy comes out, and what would be the pillars of PENSAL, because it is really doing a very great job. Again, multilingualism in tutorials. This is exactly where then the enhancement of those languages that are not spoken, or rather that are not part or are not the focus of the language policy here, are being catered for. So no one is excluded. It's a very, very interesting project. I also want then, lastly, to tap on what Alexander is saying, to say we should be careful about using multilingualism, because it's not against it. It just says be careful about using it without thorough planning. And what comes out in here is exactly the caution. You are working against that caution, making sure it doesn't happen where multilingualism denies other languages that are there. But he says strengthen the language of instruction to make sure that students get to the content. They understand what's being said. They understand what's carried by the concept. Because the concept, as you say, is not a shallow word. It is what happens in that word. So thank you very much to ensure that there is an example to showcase that the national language policy that we have, which is played out by regions, is not really a fallacy. It is alive and it has a rhythm. Thank you.
Thank you, Somi.
Thank you, sir. I commend you for the work that you have done. I have a question. Is the assessment for English proficiency of students available online, or is it also available for other faculty?
I think you can respond to yes.
So the course is not online, it is face-to-face. Oh, we offer the course online, but we do not have the material uploaded anywhere and accessible to you online. But we offer the course online. That's using our normal platforms like Teams, Zoom, and the others, but the material is not, the course is not online for you to access or for students to access. But we can, of course, talk about giving you access to the material.
Thank you, Dr. Teacher, for an inspirational talk. I think the work that you're doing is important. and especially the fact that you assert that language workers must counter and disprove deficit models about the capacity of indigenous languages and seek mindset change. This is what I try and do in my class. I also think we need to look at our history if we want to continue with the decolonization project. Many of my Xhosa speaking students don't know where the cliques come from, don't know that Chomi is an Afrikaans word. Many of my Afrikaans speaking students don't know that Kanti is a Xhosa word. So, and many of them don't know what the apartheid minister, before he became Prime Minister of Education, said, black shall be drawers of water and hewers of wood. That's all that they're good enough for, and that they weren't meant to be in these benches. But we are still fighting that. We are still fighting that right now. And I play them the song of Nina Simone, "You're young, beautiful, and black." And that's where we need to take pride in our Africanness and in our languages, and the fact that we actually civilized the West, not the other way around. Thank you.
Dr. Teacher, thank you for your presentation. I want to comment on the multilingual tutorials where students were saying they perform better when one or two languages were used during the tutorials, and I can relate on that. English is very difficult. It's not an easy language to understand. And I would often hear parents saying, school so-and-so is teaching English in isiXhosa, and for me there's no such a thing. The teacher is trying to assist the students. For example, when we were in high school, some of us, we did Julius Caesar, Beware of the Ides of March, or Let Me Know to the Marriage of True Minds. Imagine, what is that? Let me know to the marriage of true minds. Or it is a star to every wandering back whose wealth unknown, his height can be taken. If you don't translate that into isiXhosa, it won't make sense to me. So I'm happy that you are doing the work that you are doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Teacher, for another amazing, insightful presentation. You got me thinking about so many things. The first thing is, we always want to move from intent to action. How do we have, welcoming institutional culture? And Bola speaks about you have to do the pedagogical labor, and you've showcased that. You have to put in the work. And when you were speaking about the participatory development of MLGs, I was thinking about what Mbembe speaks about, where he talks about the politics of assimilation, and how after a while, you've gone through such a lot of ontological impoverishment, you don't recognize yourself anymore. So when you can bring your home into your academic space, and they no longer, they become porous, they're entangled now, then that becomes a space where you feel affirmed. So you're not just there just to simply assimilate or belong, you actually become included and respected. So I just want to take my hat off to you. It's really amazing. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren.
I just want to affirm what Lauren is saying, because in your presentation, what I liked was you involved the students in creating those terminologies. So students now are no longer consumers of knowledge, they are creators of knowledge. And then also, as you know, I'm responsible for the first year experience. So how are these first years included in the creation of knowledge? And as we know, they experience language challenges as they come into the university. And then there is now the jargon of the course that they are doing. So how are they how are they incorporated, or how are they supported, or how are they also creators of knowledge? Because what is happening at universities is that students have a wealth of knowledge from their context, you know, so this wealth is not being utilized at the university. They are only told, leave whatever you know at the gate of the university. We know better. We are going to teach you how to engage at the university. So how are we using the social capital that the students are bringing into the institution for student success?
So,
thank you, Nurse.
If I have any student of mine here, what they will tell you is the very first thing they do for me, before they get into the complex process of any kind of academic writing, is they write a reflective essay for me in any language of their choice, but preferably in a combination of languages. And that's something that I also love to share. And they bring with them a lot of insight, not just on their experiences, but a lot of insights on the challenges that we face at CPUT, from residential services to, because it's a reflective writing on their experiences of CPUT from the point of application right through to that first month at CPUT that I encountered them. So they share a lot of knowledge and these are first years. They share a lot of knowledge, and we spend a lot of time with that, anonymously engaging with the issues they raised in that. So that in itself is already an empowering tool that we offer to our first year students. And I've shared some of this previously with my dean when he was engaging with challenges that students may be encountering. I extracted some of these which are really, really just damping on your spirit when they share some. But also, which are also uplifting the joys that they experience when they encounter CPUT. There are so many positive things in that. So that's the one level. That's an empowering aspect to first year students. But first year students are also involved in this process of generating multilingual glossaries, because the invitation is sent to the university-wide community, and we do not exclude students at any level. So first year students are also involved on that, and I hope that answers your question. But for me, significantly, it is that aspect of empowering students to transition from home to university with their languages when they write their first exercises, but also with their experiences at CPUT and at home. Thank you.
I think Dr. Mkwanda would kill me if I don't allow her to ask a follow-up question. We are over time, so we've got to
move on now.
Yeah, just one more follow-up question. We are always talking about multilingualism. What are the other terminologies? Translanguage. And then yet, when we are in the classes, are we applying it? Because a student might not might understand the question that is being asked, or might be willing to engage in the discussion, but because she or she's got limited vocabulary to express him or herself. So do we in our classes allow a student to speak in the language that he or she is comfortable in, and then somebody in the class can translate, you know, what that student is saying? Then we can now empower our students to engage and affirm their mother tongue, and that it can be used in the class. So we need to move from always talking about this and implement, you know, it in practice.
You're absolutely right, and perhaps just to mention that, I've mentioned to some colleagues that one of my greatest joys is when I teach my combined mainstream and ECP class, and I break the ECPs from the mainstream, and I have an additional session with them, because that is where I can experiment, and that is where students go off to any direction, and that is where we use all languages. And of course, I also bring my TAs into some of these classes where I want to do this very explorative language work, but there are no limitations to any language that students can use. In fact,
one of my major assignments is students generating a digital story in which they must use English and any other language. So I hope that answers, but it is allowed and it's encouraged. So what I must say is those of us who are monolingual, we just need to find the right strategies to do it. But it must be done, and it is being done in some quarters. You're right. That's why I say, sorry, just quick. That's why I say, as language workers, we must be advocates, and we must be activists, and we must be, there are a few lot of other things we must be doing here, and I think we're doing them in our various quarters.
Colleagues, it's unfortunate that the debate is getting hot when we have to finish. I'm going to allow Kevin to ask make a 2-sentence long comment, and then that he will be the last one. Thanks.
Thank you, teacher. Refreshing work. I like the true multilingualism and focus and identity affirmation. You did take us out of the borders of South Africa, but you seem to have quite a strong emphasis on French. We thought you would take us a bit more into other African languages. When are you taking us? And then just one quick policy question. The regional languages, 3 of them, where did this come from? Can a province override the constitution? Or maybe some of us should be sent back to the north where we spoke isiZulu if those languages are not allowed here? I marvel at the regional 3 languages. But your work is truly multilingual, and we value that. Thank you.
Thank you. I marvel too, and I hope we talk about it some more, the 3 regional languages.
I suspect it would take you another 10 minutes to respond to that, Dr. Teacher. Thank you very much, colleagues, for your contribution. We are at a point where I'm now going to call the SOMI to come to the front, and Dr. Teacher, you stay here. This is the time when we're going to hand over to them our token of appreciation. I'm going to call my colleagues to come and hand over our token of appreciation to our keynote speakers today. Where should they stand? Here.
Oh.
I think we should come close to you because
that's like
pictures of you. Yeah.
Okay.
I think maybe you go 1-1. Sony first and then you look at it. Yes. All right. All right, so we are now handing over our token appreciation to Somi Kasite. Somi, we are very grateful for what you shared with us today. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you, Somi. We hope to invite you again to our next event. We have several. And then Dr. Chicha, it's your turn now. Thank you very much, Dr. Teacher. All right, colleagues, I'm now kindly going to call upon Dr. Cupido to come and do the vote of thanks for us, which signals the end of our language Indaba today.
This is always the worst session to have because everyone's eager to go and have lunch. So I promise I'm not going to keep you that long. Take this out of the way.
I must say that, you know, one can see when there is real passion and commitment toward language development. And I'm wanting to say a huge thank you to Somi and to Ignatius for really challenging us in terms of where we're finding ourselves at with regards to language development. For also highlighting possibly where we may have blind spots, where we may not be thinking about how in unintended ways we exclude individuals from participating as whole beings within the space. And so language is always going to be contested. But I think that the time for debate, for dialogue, for conversation, and also to make ourselves vulnerable to this process, because for many of us, we may be moving into a territory that may feel unfamiliar and unknown. But I think it's a welcomed opportunity for us to be vulnerable together, for us to learn together. And what a beautiful showcase of how we can include students as co-creators of knowledge, like Mrs. Hannah said, in this particular space. We don't hold all the knowledge. We don't hold all the experience. It sits in the room. And so we have to adopt a stance of an epistemology of uncertainty, because this can take us in so many different directions. But ultimately, the aim is for us to create a more welcoming, open space. So I really want to say thank you to our speakers, to our guest speakers, for opening up this dialogue and this debate, which we now, it's the right time with the DEET's call for funding for language, the implementation of the language framework. We're having these conversations. And I think today was really a starting point to take further what's already started. So that being said, thank you to our guest speakers once again. And then, of course, there's a host of other people that I also need to thank. And it's not going to take us an hour. We'll be very quick. So first and foremost, I'm wanting to thank Dr. Kabelo and his team, Nomkalisi, Pindiwe, Denise, Jonathan, Tandi, for putting together the Indaba for today. You know, behind the scenes, very often there's always these things that we're concerned about. This is not working, that's not working, this is not ready, this person hasn't arrived. But at the end of the day, what matters is the experience that you had today, and that's really due to the input and the energy that went into developing today. And then, of course, to MCD, who's always willing to assist us with regards to the live streaming. You know, you forget sometimes that we're actually being streamed, and I think that's part of just the organic way in which this takes place. And so a huge thank you to MCD for also being willing to assist us. And then, of course, also to Saratech. I know that it's a little bit hot in here. So maybe the HVAC system, they said, is not necessarily working as well as they expected to. And for some of us who may be suffering from other internal summers, it becomes really challenging. But nonetheless, I think the conversation was really great. And so we'd like to invite all of you, and of course to all of you who have been here today. You know, we always rely on audience participation. And today was really, it was symbolic of having staff and students in one venue where we can have these conversations. And it's reflective of what we should even be doing in our classroom spaces. Open this space up. So a huge thank you to all of you for participating in today's event. If I've left anyone out, please know that you are thanked. And we look forward to doing this again in 2024. And as we go into celebrate Heritage Day, that you have a really splendid celebration, and that you remember this day as part of you know, us celebrating who we are as individuals, our diversity. So That being said, thank you, colleagues. Enjoy your long weekend. I know it's only Wednesday today. And enjoy your lunch. Thank you. Okay. Oops. Sorry, and I switched it off there.
You did.
Yeah.
I just want to say.
Thank you, Dr. Cupido, for doing this on behalf of us. Colleagues, the language Indaba for this year has officially come to an end. I wish you all of the best and enjoy your lunch.